Hey guys, and welcome to the third part of day 4 in the hot rod tutorial. What we'll be doing in this video is really finishing up the high pulley for now. As you can see, I've decided to start by creating a high pulley version of the front grille. This is a part that will definitely benefit from high pulley since it's a chrome material, and if I apply some shader effects to that, a normal map will definitely make the reflections look better. So we're going to start out by hardening the edges there, and immediately you can see there's a little problem because I made those rear polygons into triangles already. I have to change that, so I'm using snapping to align these verts to the correct positions. Well, sort of. There we go. And I'm just going to use a little connect on those two, then connect these edges, remove that middle one, and space these out a little bit. There's still a triangle at the front. We'll see what we do about that. There we go. Perform a connect on these, move them up. I shouldn't forget to weld that vertex there. Same here, weld those. And I want the back to be pretty hard in shape, so I'm placing another control edge there. And applying my symmetry and adding turbo smooth on top, and that's starting to look like something, but it's going to need a little bit more work. In the middle, things have to be hard as well. There we go. It's another improvement. And you see there were some tries in my mesh there, but I'm not really bothering with removing them. You can see it's a little bit bumpy there at the bottom, but there's other ways to fix that first before I start removing that try. There we go. Something like that. Yeah, that looks better. There's a little problem there at the back, but it's not influencing my wireframe. I just don't want to lose too much time getting all lost in details on the grills, so skipping some parts there. Yeah, now I want to make the window for the T-bucket. Most of the time these are solid fixed windows which only fold downwards, and I'm looking for some reference on how this window connects, and I see a few here that look good. Most of the time it's some sort of semi-triangular shaped mesh that is attached to the body, and there's this supporting pillar with the glass in between, so I think I'm just going to make something like that. Nothing too complicated. It's a rudimentary car, so I'm going to keep my meshes rudimentary in shape and design too. Just checking my reference to make sure I'm not missing any interesting details. There might always be that one reference image that really has what I want to create. So anyway, I'm getting started here. I'm going to start by creating a little box that will be the main attachment, and can't forget to add it to the high pulley layer. And I'm not too satisfied with this shape. It needs to be a little bit longer, so I'm going to have to adjust that. Yeah, it bends a little bit over the body, so I'm going to try and do that too. Stuff like this is tricky to model, like where you have flat parts that sit along a curved body. That's really tricky to get right, and you can use splines sometimes to make things easier for you, but most of the time it's just tweaking and ogling it until it looks right. So just tweaking this shape until I think it's gonna look right. I'm trying to keep an even distance everywhere. Something like that. Yeah, now I'm doing an extrude since I want the pillar to which the window is attached to originate from this one. There you go. So you can see it's a bumpy, messy shape. I'm gonna have to fix that up a little bit. Something like that. Probably gonna have to round off those corners, and of course harden this part. And extrude. And then another one, I'm just gonna position this one manually. I want to make sure the top doesn't end up really pointy. And then paste my instance turbo smoother. It still looks a little bit molten, so I'm gonna have to tweak some parts a little bit. This should be harder. This part should also be a little bit harder. An inset here would help. And I'm just going to subdivide this a few times so the Turbo Smooth has more polygons to work with. Of course, delete the inside. And the sides here look a little bit too soft, so I'm trying to select those and adding a connect there. There we go. Almost there. What it needs is, of course, a windshield. The actual glass has to be in there. And this is really simple, just a flat plane of glass, nothing too special about that. What I did was hit Alt X on my keyboard, which turns that mesh into X-ray mode, which means you can slightly see through it. Most of the time I do this when I'm working with glass on cars, since it's easier than creating a material. You just have to hit hotkey and it's immediately transparent. And I just leave it like that until I get to the textures or the shaders. And of course the pillar for the windshield is attached to the side with bolts, so I'm creating some bolts for that. Delete the back side, do an inset here, like so, and then just duplicate one of those. And I want to rotate this one until it seems like it's aligned straight with the body. It's going to look a little bit more like I put some attention in it, so I prefer it like that. And a slight rotation will also help. Since I'm on angle snap, I know it's 5 degrees, so I'm just going to change that. Perfectly straight isn't too interesting to look at. I prefer a slight angle. And just looking at this from all sides to determine if it looks good. I think it does. Yeah, instead of using symmetry on that one, I'm just gonna create one mesh for it. I mean, not much point in using symmetry on a simple box. So there we go. My window on the car. Maybe it could be a little bit higher. Not sure. That's what I'm thinking now, but we'll see about that. It's still easy to change, so and hiding the high poly engine. So we can have a look at all the high poly parts we've created so far. This definitely looks interesting. And I'm looking a little bit more at my interiors here. And I think I'm going to create the steering wheel and steering column now. It's an important part of the car, and I definitely want to create it. So T-bucket steering wheel. Let's have a look what they bring up. Hot rod steering wheel. I really like this one. This one's definitely interesting. Reason for that is you can see those spokes that hold the wheel. The outer wooden part. Definitely an interesting shape. I think I'm going to try and create that. Let's see if there's some more parts here. Wheels, frame, windows. Not really seeing anything too useful here. But some more reference on the interior instruments could always be nice. But I think I have enough, so I'm gonna get started. For a steering wheel, I always start with a tube shape. A tube shape is like a hollow cylinder, and you have enough control over it. It's easier to create than a cylinder that you carve out yourself. And I'm moving it up top, so it's just easier to create the shape by itself. Lining all these parts together. There we go, 12 on the inside. Attach it, and let me see my reference picture. I'm going to try and match this as close as possible. It shouldn't be too hard. Needs to be a little bit bigger. And all we do now is a bunch of insets, extrudes, and bevels. It's really no big deal, this sort of thing. Need to make sure you harden your edges. And weld all those together. And there's these 3 connecting parts which have metal attachments to the wood, and I think the spoke parts just go directly into the center of the steering wheel. Yeah, of course, can't forget creating the backside. Attach the outside part. As you can see, it was square in when in the intersection when it's not smoothed, but when smoothed, it just smooths out to a round part nicely. So creating these shapes on which the spokes will attach, rounding them out a little bit at the bottom. And ouch, something's gone wrong here. I think I might have selected too many edges when I did my there we go. That looks better. So that was a little bit of the danger of working in one view. There we go. Harden these out like so. And we pretty much have most of our part here, so it's time I'm going to add the spokes on there. They're a little bit longer, they're way thinner. Move them in there a little bit. And I'm making 4 copies because I think that will look interesting. And you saw me add an edit poly and then collapse it too. The reason you do that is if everything's an instance and you convert it to an editable poly, the instance links will be broken. So yeah, there's only one way to do that correctly. As you can see, there's a little bit of a problem here. Things aren't really aligning. It's all crooked. So I'm gonna have to backtrack a bit and try and fix that. And it turns out that the center of the steering wheel isn't aligned with the center of the outside of the steering wheel. So my mistake. I think I forgot to turn on the align x-axis when I was using the align tool. Something to watch out for. There we go, just slightly tweaking this. And then if I use a 180-degree rotation here, I can reuse them on the other side. There we go. Yeah, this looks almost right. That took longer than it should, but there's always some unforeseen problems, right? So now we can just simply rotate by 120 degrees. Why 120? Well, 360 divided by 3 equals 120 degrees. But once again, they don't seem to be aligned correctly, so I'm just going to completely redo this. It looks almost correct now. But still, these parts don't look like they're aligned to the center. Okay, so I've moved it a bit manually, and now it seems to sit alright. Most of the time I pay attention to these using these pivots, but I must have lost track of it a little bit. There we go, steering wheel. Looks pretty snazzy. And it should be a little bit bigger, a little bit fatter. And we're going to move it into position. And the reason I'm unhiding all my low poly is because I of course want the that steering converter box to line up with the steering wheel. So a line from that steering box has to come out from under the dashboard. It can't pierce the dashboard, and then has to connect up with the steering wheel. There we go. I'm just doing this manually. That should work out. The reason I'm using a line is because it's easier to tweak, as I've mentioned before. Yep. That looks now I'm going to add some more detail to the steering column, since obviously this is a part that's more than just a solid cylinder. Delete the parts you won't see. I'm making sure not to add any attachment on here that are too big, because when making the normals, I just want to make this one single cylinder with no geometric details. I just want to let the normals fix everything for me there. There we go. Of course, you can't just have these parts pierce through the firewall between the interior and the engine. So I want to add some sort of plate in between there to ground these objects into each other. Like that. And what I want to do now is use some bolts. So I'm just going to copy these. I really don't feel like creating them again. There we go. And I'm just going to align this bolt and place it on that part over there. Move them down and attach everything. You could think, yeah, it's intersecting here as well. Well, I'm thinking about that, and I haven't mentioned that, but you'd say, yeah, there's going to be a lot more detail at the front of the firewall near the engine, like insets and that sort of stuff. I'm not creating them now. I'm just leaving that for Photoshop, since I just want to overdo it in terms of detail there. And for the same reason, I'm not creating any geometry to ground the steering column to the front of the car there. Just going to leave it like that. And I'm looking at reference here, and I want to keep it more rudimentary than this one with the red steering wheel. Has to be more simple. So there we go. Use an inset. These instruments, obviously, I'm not going to create a high poly for every single one of them. Same for the low poly. I would just create one instrument dial, duplicate it all over, and then just change the texture on the inside. So it looks like I have a tachometer, speedometer, whatever. Point is not to overdo things in terms of work here. And this one needs to be scaled. It's always more interesting to have different scales of dials. There, make them a little bit less high. Copy that. 3 over there. There we go. That's okay for a start. I just want this to look okay in the high poly by itself. And since obviously the steering column can't just hang there by itself underneath the dashboard, I need to create a little part of a little piece of mesh to attach it with. I just got this for my reference. You might have seen it. I think it's on the yellow one. Also has a part like this. There we go, nice and round. And I'm selecting these parts since I want to do an inset on it. Why am I doing an inset? So the bottom part gets rounded nicely. And I'm creating this to add a little bit more detail to that attaching bracket. Yep, there we go. And delete the inside since you want to see that. Add another edge here to harden things, and now just attach that. Attach everything together, and there we go. I've created my steering column, and from over here it looks perfect, nicely detailed. That's how I like it. So a fairly simple object like this, you can make it interesting enough just by using your reference. I mean, I have a few references of interesting hot rod interiors. I'm going by that, dropping the things that are too much work, taking the things that can easily add something to the car. Yeah, like I mentioned before, I found the window was too low, so I'm increasing its height. I'll have to increase the pillars also. Okay, so let's see what's up next. At the back side of the vehicle, I want to have these beautiful lamps. This red big T Ford, wow, I really like the lamps on this one. I've been thinking that all along. That's why I saved that picture. I definitely want this sort of lamps on my car. And they have this gorgeous classic 1930s look to them, so that's exactly why I want them. They'll also add some nice color to my car. I can have the ones at the back bright red, and the ones at the side will have bright orange for indicator lights in there, so definitely something I want on my car. Interesting shape, interesting colors, small details. We're going for this. And they're not exactly hard to model. Looking at them, I can see they're just two modified cylinders shoved into each other. Yeah, add some thickness to that edge there. You see, most of this stuff can be created from one single cylinder, like that. And then extrude the lens of the light a little bit. Yeah, now we can start creating the actual lens. This is for a normal map, so I'm just adding an overdose of bevels and inset and extrudes there, since it'll help make the normal maps look better. Definitely these parts will be able to get away with really simple cylindrical type of shapes and just have the normal map do its work there. There we go. And I still haven't added a turbo smooth on top here. As I mentioned before, I'm pretty sure this is going to look how I want it. So time to add the other part. The other reason why I'm not adding a turbo smooth is if I add it on one of these parts, then you obviously have to remove it before you attach it to the other one. So I'm just postponing it until I have both components of these lights. Obviously I didn't want to paste a turbo smooth there. Just want to convert it to a pulley. It's a bit tricky to see, but I think I know what's going on here. It gets a little bit wider, then it gets a lot wider. It's not as high. I really have to look at the reference a lot, since subtleties can make the difference here. If you give this thing vastly different proportions, it's going to look ugly, so I want to avoid that. There's this knob on the top that gets wider and then smooths off again. It's something like that. I'm not getting too lost in details also, but I just don't want these to look like some giant mushroom growing out of the top or anything. Because this is a mistake beginners might typically make. If you create this sort of part, you don't have an eye for the proportions and the exact shapes of this object. It's really an important skill to be able to discern what the proportions, what the size of an object is, just by looking at pictures. And the only way to actually get good at this is just be really strict for yourself. Just keep going back, and back until it's really perfect. I used to do this a lot with my first cars. Just keep going back all the time, and never be satisfied. Always keep aiming for 100% accuracy. This thing doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but this sort of determination to have things look accurate can really help sell your object and makes things look more realistic. Okay, so we've got our parts. You know, I'm thinking that that bottom part might be a little bit too big. Not too sure. We'll have to see about that. Yeah, it's a little bit too big, so I'm just resizing it. Like I said, be strict for yourself. If you think it looks wrong, change it. And this has to sit a little bit lower. Using ring and grow selections is an easy way of selecting otherwise hard to select parts. Turn it gray. And I think they could be a little bit bigger. On that top part, too small. I could tell right away. It really helps looking at these parts from a distance. And with this, I'm pretty much satisfied. I don't think I'm going to create a bracket to attach it to that. Yeah, it needs to be a little bit larger. This is not really going by reference. This is just going by what will look better on the car. If they're too tiny, the detail will look overdone and you might hardly notice them. So I've created one, and since they're such gorgeous parts, I'm just going to duplicate them to the back and reuse them there. They'll be attached to the frame or the fuel tank, I'm not sure. I might attach them to these bracket band parts on the fuel tank. For the moment, I'll just place them over there. Yeah, it looks better if I move them more to the outside. And now, obviously, I'm going to do a mirror to have multiples of them. So there we go. Another part that will add to the detail of my car. So, let's see what's up next. At the front, we still have some parts to work on the high poly. Those lights, since they're so round, and the low poly will probably not be that round, I need to create a low poly mesh for them as well. High poly mesh for them as well. Apologies. Something like that. A loop. Chamfer it so we have a really hard edge there. I even used the chamfer subdivision of 2. And this probably won't need so much to have it look like a high poly. Yeah, I'm not really happy with what I just did there. So I just duplicated the mesh back to the high poly layer, then went back to the low poly because I was messing up my mid poly / low poly mesh. And you still want to keep a copy of both, since if you don't, you're just going to end up spending time removing parts that you added in the first place. So useless work anyway. For the light bulb in the center, I'm not going to actually model a light bulb. I'm just going to add a little sphere, attach it, and in the normal maps, that would look just like an inside of a light bulb, inside of a headlight of a car. There we go. So these are the parts we've worked on so far in this video. And yeah, there we go, the spikes at the front. We also need to change those. So not to forget now, creating an HP copy, adding them to the high poly layer. And we're going to start modeling these. This mesh is a little bit messy. I'm probably gonna have to clean that up a little bit. We want the blades to be sharp at the top, so obviously we need to add a chamfer there. And because of that, the front is no longer a single point, so we can add that connect we just did. To prevent the bottom and back from going all too lumpy and blobby, we're adding some insets and extrude, and then ouch, this needs some fixing. Before I do that extrude, I need to fix the front there. It's a bit of a problem. If you do an inset on really tight areas, you can get the mesh to intersect itself there. So something like that. And obviously at the front we have another problem. I need to move that vert to fix that. Add some more parts. Still a bit too round at the top there. So what am I going to do about that? Well, first at the bottom add this one. And then to fix that roundness there, I'm going to select these edges and add a connect. Yeah, and that shape looks like it'll pass. And I want the top to be even sharper, so I've added another connect there. Make things look really sharp. Yeah, that should be it. Now another part that will benefit from high poly is these leaf springs at the front. I don't actually want the high poly to have so many boxes with so many subdivisions. I just want a single solid model. So that's what I'm doing here. I've created a copy and I'm preparing these for the low poly already. Yeah, there we go. But that was just a little preparation for the low poly. Sometimes I can't help myself and I do those in advance. So now I'm going to work on the high poly a little bit more. Use a connect in the center there. We're just really simply gonna create high poly versions of these bent boxes. And I'm adding a turbo smooth modifier. And you can see the outsides still get rounded a little bit too much. So up to me to add another set of edges there to harden those parts up. And there's a little problem here. For some reason my connects are moving in opposite direction, so you can just use move instead. There we go. This is really gonna look better in the normal map if I use it like this. Might need some fixing though, we'll see about that. Alright, another very visible, very technical part are these brake hubs. I was doubting if I was going to do it, but I think I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to create a high poly version of those as well. So I'm creating a copy on my high poly layer, and I'm going to get to work with these. An inset to make those things harder. And what I'm going to do now is tricky, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to attach those parts that I modeled separately to the main cylinder. This is something you wouldn't normally do like this, but as I said, I was doubting if I was going to create a high poly version of this, and so it's just going to need some messy modeling to fix things up. There, I added a bridge to those two parts. This is going to cause some more problems. This is going to be tough to fix. An inset on these parts probably won't work all that well. You see, there's some problems there because I'm really stretching this wireframe to its limits. It's super ugly. I need to fix that. And probably by moving these verts into less extreme positions, I can get it fixed, and not all that much. What I think I need to do is do a little bit of reorganizing at the center of this mesh. Obviously we have end guns at the sides there. It's easier to fix them by connecting them like this. Okay, this part is looking acceptable. There's still some small errors there at the top. But first I'm going to tackle those blobby extensions. These I won't attach to the mesh. It's just going to be too much work. If I wanted to do that, I would have added more segments to the main part of this brake hub in the first place. Here we go, another bit of reorganizing. I'm adding a try here, but in the end it minimizes artifacts. So instead of keeping all quads, I added tries and had less problems. Yep, delete that inside part. Add some extra detail here. You might notice also that on those two socket parts that attach to the wheel axle, I didn't add any horizontal subdivisions. Reason for that is it will mess up my wireframe and looks just as good with the ones at the top and bottom. Like always, I'm going to add some tiny surface detail, in this case some sort of bolt type of mesh. Simple type of mesh, nothing too special. Attach it to have a look. First to copy it, then have a look what it looks like. And there we go, that's some nice detail added. Should help break up that big flat surface. The steering arm there might look a little bit too rounded, I'm not sure. I'm going to create a copy of the actual brake calipers. And the brakes are a hydraulic system. And there's a piston in here, and this piston is pushed against the brake disc by hydraulic force. Well, I'm not sure if it's hydraulic force. On these really old hot rods it might be mechanical, but anyway, there is a piston that pushes against the brake disc, which creates friction, and such friction that the car is slowed down. It's a really simple system actually. There we go. Good enough. And I was thinking about making the construction viable. It makes sense to add some bolts at the parts where these things are attached. See, this is not a complicated high poly mesh, but because it's so much in view, I think it'll help to have these nicely rounded edges in the normal map. Okay, I think we have most of our high poly parts ready here. Just a little bit of tweaking. I might create more once I get to the actual baking, but to keep myself focused, I try to move on. You saw me do a little bit of low poly work already. I think from now on and in the next parts I'll be creating some low poly. So see you in the next part, guys.